On June 9th, Marine Corps Systems Command welcomed the new commander, Brigadier General David Walsh. He's an aviator by trade with a wealth of acquisition knowledge, including time serving as the Corps' Light Attack Helicopters Assistant Program Manager at Pax River, Maryland. During that period, he was selected as part of the first cadre of Marine Corps acquisition officers. As an acquisition officer, he went on to a variety of assignments to include working as a test pilot, as well as several positions supporting foreign military sales. He also served as program manager on several helicopter programs. In January 2008, he became the Director of Operations at Fleet Readiness Center East, Marine Corps Air Station Cherry Point, where he managed depot-level maintenance, repair, overhaul of aircraft, engines and components, and supervised production flight test operations, giving him a deeper understanding of both the depot and sustainment world. He served as the military assistant to the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition at the Pentagon, and was the acting Program Executive Officer Land System for several months before assuming his current position. Obviously, I skipped several entries in a 30-year career that has seen this leader grow from a young aviator in various Marine operational squadrons to being the individual responsible for much of the gear in those squadrons to ultimately the head of Marine Corps ground and IT acquisition. So I encourage you all to take a few moments and read his bio to better understand the breadth and depth of knowledge he brings to his current assignment. Sir, I know you got lots going on, so I appreciate you taking the time to be here on the podcast. But before we get started, can we'll just back up in time a little bit and
Sure.
Tell us where you're from and why you decided to join the Marine Corps.
Okay, yeah, first of all, appreciate the opportunity to talk today. I joined the Marine Corps in 1992, originally from New York, didn't have any family background in the military. I studied aerospace engineering at University of Virginia and was always interested in aviation and space and all that kind of stuff that was going on with the space shuttle back in the 80s. And that's where I took my education. After I graduated, I happened to be looking for a job in aviation world and got connected with Pax River as a civilian, trying to get a civilian job there. At the time, there was a hiring freeze, and someone I knew said, well, if you love aviation so much, why don't you go fly? So I went around shopping around the different services, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps, and fell in love with the Marine Corps culture, saw the opportunity there to go fly, and joined up. So 1992, jumped in.
So I have a personal bias, but I really think you made the right decision. Nothing against all the other services, but so your predecessor spent a few years focused on modernizing the individual Marine from pure fleet rifle to most of the things that the individual Marine wears, carries. There's a lot of work left to be done to ensure the Corps meets the objectives for Force Design 2030. What do you see as your main acquisition priorities for the next several years?
We take our cues from the Commandant, obviously, and Force Design 2030, and in General Heckel over at CD&I as far as priorities for the Marine Corps. If you take a look at what the Force Design Update 2030 just came out a couple months ago, there's a bunch of priorities that the Commandant's listed there, but the ones that apply to us as acquisition Marines and an acquisition Corps have to do with our counter-recon fight, our sensors, being able to find and fix the enemy, and then bring lethal effects to them, enabling it with a robust and redundant kill web. So for us, that means putting systems out there that can see the enemy, things like the Gator radar that PO Land System is developing, some of our other passive sensors will be high priorities, and then things that can pass that targeting information to lethal effects with a redundant, resilient comm network. And then, of course, putting warheads on bad guys with things like Nemesis and Emmerich that allow our Marines to be successful in the battlefield. All of that has to be enabled with a good logistics chain. So for us, as far as priorities on acquisition side, as we look to develop all those capabilities I just mentioned, they have to be mobile, they have to be light, they have to be easily transportable with a small logistics footprint that can be easily maintained by a small unit. So that's my priorities for as set forth and falling in on what the Commandant has put forth in Force Design 2030.
And again, you bring a wealth of background to this. I mean, obviously, with your experience at NAVAIR and the time you've spent up at the Pentagon, you know how to maneuver the building. You know where the folks are. Ideally, you know the doors to knock on. What do you hope to bring down to the ground side? What things are you looking forward to do here as far as perhaps maybe bringing a little bit of the NAVAIR model or capturing what we do here on the ground side and incorporating some of the things that you did at NAVAIR?
Yeah, like you mentioned, all of my acquisition experience has been either over at NAVAIR or my time at the Pentagon. There are definitely differences between what NAVAIR SysCom is doing and Marine Corps SysCom is doing, how we're organized, how we do business. I think there's pluses and minuses on both sides. My brief time over here at PO Land Systems and Marine Corps SysCom, I'm still learning how the system operates. You know, taking a lot of advice from folks who have been here a long time as I look to set priorities and look at how we can change the organization to be better. My time at NAVAIR, I had the opportunity to go across a lot of functional areas. I started as a tester, so did a lot some time in the test world, engineering, logistics, manufacturing, and production, quality, and then into program management, of course. So I've got a pretty wide breadth of experience across the functional areas, at least on the NAVAIR side. I think that will translate well over to the SysCom side, the Marine Corps SysCom side as well. In my time in the Pentagon, I had the opportunity to work closely, obviously, with ASN RDA's office and build a lot of relationships with the DASNs, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Navy, in all the functional areas, and particularly with our DASN Air Ground. And using those relationships, I hope to use those relationships here at SysCom to get us the help we need, the support we need to get stuff moving faster through the acquisition system.
Is it fair to say maybe work a little bit on building a better bridge between us and the Navy and, you know, given your relationship on that NAVAIR side? I mean, from a Marine Corps perspective, that we fight and we do everything as a MAGTF. So,
absolutely,
you know, we understand the air. I mean, we do have different cultures and communities, but
right.
At the end of the day, it's one seamless team.
Yeah, you know, we in the Marine Corps operate as a MAGTF, so building that bridge between the aviation and the ground side is super important. I have those connections over on the aviation side, both on the operational side and in the acquisition community. Yeah, obviously that's a priority. Our 8059 community, our aviation acquisition officers, are separated by an MOS from our 8061 ground acquisition officers, but it's really the same work. And I'm hoping to be able to build a tighter connection between our 8059s and 8061s on the acquisition side. And I think that'll make it even a deeper connection between our aviation and ground Marines and the fleet and how we support our aviation and ground fleet. As far as the Navy goes, my time up at ASN RDA's office was really valuable in building some connections with the Navy side of the acquisition community. And like you said, one of the focuses of the Commandant's Planning Guidance is more naval integration between the Navy and the Marine Corps. And that can start here on the acquisition side and understanding what the Navy's priorities are and aligning those and doing our best to support those through the Marine Corps acquisition community as well.
So you touched a little bit on the acquisition MOS, Military Occupational Specialty. You were among the first to be officially docked into that MOS, and we have two, obviously, the air and the ground. You served all that time in the air, now you're interacting with all the ground folks. What is some of your vision for the future? Do you see a need to continue to work on that community? Are we getting enough acquisition officers into the MOS?
Two things on that. As far as the 8059, 8061, I touched on it a little bit. There's a lot of similarities between those two communities. In the past, I think, have not maybe taken full advantage of those similarities. So I'm hoping to bring those two communities a little bit closer together and spend some time learning from each other. I think there's pluses and minuses on the way NAVAIR does business and the way Marine Corps SysCom does business. Obviously, we're all working toward the same goal of bringing the best capabilities, sustainable capabilities out to our Marines. And there's a lot can be learned from NAVAIR learning from SysCom and SysCom learning from the way Naval does business. And our Marines, our 8059s and 8061s are a great means of bringing those two communities closer together. As far as attracting new talent into the acquisition community, it's always been a challenge because as you sign up as an acquisition officer, you sign away your opportunity to become a fleet commander.
Right.
That's most Marines don't join the Marine Corps to be acquisition officers and go get into this business. They sign up to be trigger pullers and pilots and wiggle sticks, drop bombs, that kind of stuff. So convincing folks that this is a worthy path to take is sometimes challenging, especially at the younger ranks. I think as folks get into the acquisition world and they see just the outsized impact they can have as a major or a lieutenant colonel, or as you go up the ranks, even the wider impact, they get bought in. They recognize that as a lieutenant colonel, say, you can go be a battalion commander or a squadron CO, and you'll have that job for 18 months ish, and you'll impact that unit. And of course, that's super important. What we do as warfighter, that's the pointy end of the spear. But as a lieutenant colonel in the acquisition community, you have a generational impact on how the Marine Corps operates, the gear they use, and you'll impact a generation of Marines. Much longer impact, much deeper impact than you will as a fleet commander. So convincing people that's the way to go is a challenge. Getting people to sign up on the front end. I talked to the commandant about this last week with regards to talent management, and he kind of broadened it a little bit beyond just the acquisition community. How do we convince our junior mid-grade Marines that something outside of the fleet or outside of command of a fleet unit is a worthy pursuit, a worthy career goal for the benefit of the Marine Corps? There's a lot of stuff. Acquisition is one, but there are a lot of things in the supporting establishment that are really, really important to the Marine Corps, and we need really good Marines in those jobs.
Key critical capabilities that aren't necessarily in an infantry unit.
Right.
Transition a little bit. I mean, you talked about the fact that we're a naval expeditionary force, and part of the commandant's conversations on force design. Acquisition is a team sport. I think you like to use the word partners. We have a lot of partners that we deal with on a regular basis. You spent some time as a test pilot doing experimentation, so you have an understanding of the work. What are you hoping to build on with our relationships, both with the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, McWill, as well as some of our other partners, Combat Development and Integration Command?
Yeah, those partnerships are really, really important. The Warfighting Lab and CTD and CDI, different roles. I know General Pasadrian like to talk about the three amigos,
right,
and the tight relationship that those three organizations need to have.
And I just want to clarify that the three amigos actually had 5 or 6 different amigos, but
yeah, and the partnerships. Those are not our only partners.
Right.
Not our only partners in the Marine Corps, and definitely not our only partners in this acquisition business. But in particular, those two, Marine Corps Warfighting Lab and then Capabilities Development and Integration, they are the ones that, with the Warfighting Lab, are on the very front edge in our S&T world, looking at the cutting edge technology, working closely with industry and the fleet to experiment, see what works, what doesn't work. And then, of course, that translates into capabilities development and integration, where they generate requirements, which then come over to acquisition side for us to go procure and field and sustain those capabilities. The more tightly knit those three folks are, and those three communities are, the better it is for our Marines. If we can get the acquisition community involved up front in the S&T world, in the requirements development process, and vice versa, get the science and technology folks and the requirements folks involved in the acquisition process, we'll maintain as much maneuver space as possible through the acquisition process to make sure that we have the best available options to field to our Marines. So as an acquisition community, as program managers, as program teams, engineers supporting SysCom, all of the folks that support the team, I think it's really important that they get involved in what McWill is doing and the work they're doing in the S&T community, so we can understand as those capabilities evolve from great ideas and mature through to something that will generate a requirement, to something we can actually go buy, that we lead turn that. We understand we get involved early, so it's not a throw it over the fence to capabilities development and integration to generate a requirement, then they throw it over the fence to the acquisition community to go buy it, because we lose time in each of those transitions if we're not fully integrated. So, and it's all about time. If you talk to the commandant, talk to General Heckle over at CD&I, talk to the fleet. It's all about getting stuff out to our Marines as quickly as possible. Good cutting edge technology that a lot of it you can see out with our partners and the other services internationally in the commercial world, things that our Marines could be using right now that we need to get them in the hands of our Marines. And the more quickly we can do that, the better. And building that relationship and that partnership with our folks in the S&T world, experimentation world, and in the requirements generation world, and our resourcing partners at P&R will help us get that stuff out there quickly.
And I think one of the things, if I heard you correctly, is a lot of great technology out there, a lot of great ideas, and people have vision, and sometimes we look at that vision and we say, well, boy, wouldn't that be great? Something I can use in the battlefield. But I think one of the things, if I understood you correctly, as you explained that, is the fact that the experimentation is going to lead you to ensuring that you have an attainable requirement, and not a requirement. It looks great, sounds great, I think it can do X, Y, and Z. So you actually put rigor into the process and validate the fact that you've got a requirement that's doable,
right,
and not something that's outside the realm of, because we get a lot of bright ideas.
Yeah, and industry in particular, does a great job working on the cutting edge technology. They've got some really smart folks. They've got resources they invest to make sure they're pushing the envelope. Our academia, same thing, pushing the envelope at the cutting edge of technology. Some of that stuff's looks really good. Looks like exactly what the Marines need, but you really need the folks on the engineering side, the technical side, and our logistics side in particular, to take a look at that and make sure that it's something that is sustainable, that as we feel it to our Marines, it's something that works in the environment that our Marines are going to be using it, and then we have some kind of sustainment chain to make sure that once it's out there that they can continue to use it. That's not just a one and done, that we feel that it breaks and we throw it away.
So you probably need some Lance Corporal out there to Marine proof the thing before
Absolutely.
You put it out there.
Yeah, and that's a great comment. If we can get our fleet folks involved in taking a look and evaluating some of that stuff up early, and that helps industry. Industry loves to have our Marines out there playing with their gear, giving them ideas, because industry has their own goals. They're a for-profit
Absolutely,
for the most part, and that's a great thing. It's great for the country, great for the industrial base. They want to develop something that our Marines can use, and it will help us defend our nation. So, and that's something they'll be able to sell to us, right, and to the other services. So getting our Marines involved early out there, taking a look at what industry is doing, taking a look at what academia is doing, taking a look at what the Warfighting Lab is doing is really, really important. Lance Corporal will go and they will find a way to break it. They will use it in the environment that they're going to be using.
Lance Corporal Pacheco broke a lot of things out there, so
exactly.
a long time ago.
And we learn from that, right? We learn when we break things, and the industry can improve it, make it better, so that when it actually gets out to the fleet, it doesn't break and it's sustainable, and it's something the Marines can use in the battlefield.
So you talked a little bit about the front end, the entry into the acquisition process with our partnership, but let's talk a little bit about partner that sustains us. So our relationship to LawCom, because ultimately we have a responsibility from cradle to grave on these capabilities, but a lot of that transitions to that LawCom partnership. Can you, and I know you've had some personal experience and background in depot maintenance and things of that sort. So can you talk a little bit about what you hope to do there with that partnership as we go forward?
Sure. Obviously a really, really important partnership in sustainment. So what we do at Marine Corps Systems Command is we develop the systems, and as part of that development, we want to obviously have sustainment in mind as we go through that process and field something. Part of that is making sure that those parts in the maintenance and supply chain is mature, so that when it gets out there, we'll be able to provide parts to our units. They'll be able to maintain the equipment, and LOGCOM obviously plays a very, very important role in that fleet sustainment piece of it. Once we establish sources of supply, sources of maintenance, qualify them, it's LOGCOM that makes sure those parts get bought. They get through the supply system, they get through the logistics system, and they show up out in the front lines where those Marines are going to be using them. And that they have everything they need to be able to maintain them, whether at the operational level, out at the fleet unit, or all the way back through the depots.
Let me move on to another partner, because obviously, and we touched on industry a little bit. Industry is a key critical component. We come up with a lot of great ideas and capabilities that we need, but at the end of the day, it's ultimately industry delivering the product. What's your experience of you? I know you've spent a lot of time talking to industry. So what role do you see from industry, and what are you hoping to get from industry as you take on this position?
Yeah, industry is obviously one of our key partners. The Marine Corps and the government don't produce a lot. We produce some things, but most of the stuff that we field to our Marines comes from industry, right? So it's really important that we build a strong relationship with them. I mentioned that they're profit. They're there to make money. They're there to sell things to the government. That's good. That's not a bad thing. That's good for the country. Where we can align our priorities is where we make our most money. We as industry develops new equipment and looks to sell it to us, if we can get involved up front and early with those guys and collaborate well with them, they'll win. They'll have something they can sell to us and make money. We'll win because we're providing a great capability to our Marines. Our industry partners, they're great patriots. They're looking to do the right thing. A lot of them are veterans, Marine Corps veterans. A lot of Marine Corps veterans out in the companies that we work with, and they are truly, sincerely looking to develop something that will help in our national defense. So keeping that early, constant communication with them is really, really important.
Yeah, and again, to your point, I mean, they have to look and see where they're going to invest the future money. If the Marine Corps needs a truck in 5 years, you got to let them know now, because to walk down, it's not like you can walk down to the Ford or GM store and say, "Can I get this model?" So it takes some time. So I gather you're hoping to sustain and build on those relationships that we currently have.
Absolutely.
Finally, in partnerships, and there are a lot of other partnerships that we can talk about, but one very important partner in all of this is Congress. Congress gives us not only the authority, but the money to make sure we get things done and get them in the hands of our Marines. So let's pretend it's Christmas in July. They're working on the on the next budget. What are you hoping to see come this fall?
I talked about our acquisition priorities a little bit earlier, and I think we're hoping to see the Congress continue to support Force Design 2030 and all the capabilities we need to achieve that vision. Congress has been very, very supportive, and we look forward to continuing that. So what I hope to see is continued investment and continued support from the budget to move down that path.
So finally, I mean, you've been in the seat for a couple of weeks. You got a workforce of about 2,500 folks out here trying to field cutting-edge capability. What are you looking forward to most in regards to working with this team? And maybe in a little bit, what are you hoping that the workforce understands about you and how you work to best accomplish the mission we have at hand?
Yeah, sure. First impressions of the team here, it's a really, really motivated, energetic team. I hope to sustain that. It's a really, really important mission. Important to me personally. A lot of us have family serving out there in the Marine Corps right now. My son is a second lieutenant. So I think that energy and that connection to the fleet is really, really important. And I feel it. I sense it as I walk around and talk to folks. I hope to continue to sustain that. I think it's really easy. It's easy to sell folks on the idea that we're doing something really, really important for our Marine Corps and our country. So I really enjoy that energy. I enjoy the positivity. I enjoy the folks and the way folks here at Mark Crossiscom really do try to do everything they can to support our Marines.
What do you want folks to know about you, your leadership style, how you do things? Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I value collaboration. I think we can't get anything done in the acquisition world without our partners, whether it's our partners in industry I talked about, or partners inside the Marine Corps fence with the Warfighting Lab, CD&I, our fleet customers, most importantly. What I've seen 20 years of acquisition is we are most effective when we communicate and work well together. There's a book called Getting to Yes that I think is really impactful. If you get a chance to read it, it's about understanding each other's motivations, whether it's, I talked about industry a little bit, but the fleet, industry, acquisition, our acquisition system and the challenges and demands it puts on us. If we can each understand each other's perspectives and work towards a common goal, we can get to yes. So I think collaboration is, I'm a very collaborative leader. I look to get people's input before we move towards a decision. I'm also a big proponent of accepting informed risk. Mm-hmm. So I talked a little bit about the need to go fast, get things out to our Marines as quickly as possible. If we try and eliminate every little risk, whether it's a technical risk or a programmatic risk, a financial risk, if we try and knock all those down and eliminate all of them, we'll never get anything fielded to our Marines. So it's important to understand the risk and to take informed risks at the right levels.
Sir, I truly appreciate that because, we often hear people say 80% is good enough, but it's true that often 80% gets us to 100% once it's out there. So that I think that's great, and I wish you all the best of luck as you go forward on this. I do want to thank you for taking the time to share some thoughts and some of your opinions with you so folks can get a better understanding of who you are. But before I let you go, there's something here we do on the show called the lightning round.
All right.
So if you got a couple minutes, let me hit you with some hard questions.
Sure.
And I think you may have already touched on one of them. Hopefully you weren't cheating and peeked at my script here. So I got to ask you, what's your favorite duty station?
I'd say Pax River. I've always enjoyed. We've been in and out of there 3 times. One of my sons was born there. Just a great community. I think it's close enough to D.C. where you can get in and do the city stuff. I'm a city guy, so I enjoy the city, but it's also a little bit further away, so you can enjoy a little bit of quiet time too.
Oh, that's awesome. We haven't had that one on the show yet, so that's a first.
I may be the Pax River guys.
Yeah, it's all right. A shout out to the Navy Marine Corps team out there. So I think that's great. What's a favorite TV show, book, movie, or a podcast you'd recommend?
I mentioned Getting to Yes. I think that's a good one. I don't read a lot of fiction. I read a lot of nonfiction. So most of the stuff I'd recommend is leadership type stuff. Leadership thinking. There's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. Daniel Kahneman. That's a good one about how we make decisions. I think anytime you can be aware of how people make decisions is a good thing, and you can learn from that and make better informed decisions. That's a good one. What else that I've read recently? Start with Why. Simon Sinek. That's a good one. Understanding root cause and getting to, again, why people make decisions, why things are the way they are. If you can dig down a little bit, a lot of people jump to a conclusion right away, but if you dig down a little bit and get to root cause and what's really motivating folks, I think it can be really powerful.
So the problem with that is both of those books I haven't read yet, and my producer's over there taking notes, and she's going to make me read them later on. So she has quite the extensive list. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. If you weren't doing this, what would David Walsh be out there doing instead?
I miss flying, so I would, money not being an object, I would have a plane. I'd be traveling around, flying around, visiting clips.
Well, if you got room, I'll go with you. So
yeah. So if money was no object, I'd be have my own plane and traveling. But I do miss flying, so I'd like to get back and get into the cockpit again. Okay.
So you don't retain your flight status while you're in the acquisition world?
I retain my flight status. I don't retain my flight qualifications.
Gotcha. All right. And this one's challenging for a lot of people, but if you could have any superpower, what would it be? No, that's quite all right, because we have people coming out of the woodwork and making up things that I've just never heard before. So
yeah,
invisibility is a good one. They don't see you coming, and and then we've also had the power to be able to do what I want with this defense budget of mine. So
yeah, that would be a good one.
I'll just throw those out there as a couple of recommendations. Listen, sir, I want to say it's been a pleasure having the conversation.
Thanks.
I want to thank you for taking the time to do this. Absolutely. I know there's a lot on your plate. You're working on getting to know the workforce and wrapping your arms around the plethora of programs that we have here. So I wish you the best and continued future success. And maybe somewhere down the road we'll have you back and you can talk to us a little bit more about how things are going.
Absolutely. Love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this concludes another episode of Equipping the Corps. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation today. If so, please take a couple minutes, leave us a review, subscribe, tell your friends about us. Till next time, Manny Pacheco signing off.